As rain poured down, streaking the windows like tears, Sarah stood in the shadows of her dimly lit living room, watching the world outside change shape. Thunder rumbled ominously, rattling her bones, and the distant flashes of lightning illuminated the storm-tossed trees. That evening was supposed to bring comfort, a quiet respite from the chaos she faced daily. Instead, it felt like the perfect metaphor for her life: dark, unpredictable, and a little frightening. She felt trapped in a whirlwind of responsibilities, expectations and heartache that clung to her like a heavy cloak. Just yesterday, she had received another call from work, demanding her presence in a meeting that would inevitably consume her evenings. The pressure felt suffocating. As the rain lashed down, all she could think about was how much she longed for the solace of her most cherished refuge, the barn. With a fierce resolve igniting in her heart, Sarah grabbed her jacket and flung open the door, stepping into the tempest that mirrored her inner turmoil. Each raindrop felt like a small punch against her skin, yet she relished the sensation. It grounded her, reminding her of what truly mattered. The chaos outside was just one storm. Inside, she had a sanctuary waiting, her horse, Jake. Navigating through the muddy path leading to the barn, Sarah's determination overcame the elements. As she approached, the familiar wooden structure emerged like a beacon of hope. The rain faded into a soft patter, and she pushed the door open, inhaling the rich, earthy scent of hay, leather, and horse. It felt like stepping into another world, one that welcomed her with open arms. Jake, her thunderous chestnut gelding, greeted her with a soft whinny, the sound like music to her ears. His warm, dark eyes met hers, and in that moment, the weight of the world lifted. "Hey there, big guy," she said, a smile breaking through her somber mood as she approached him. With deft hands, she undid the latch to his stall, unleashing the excited energy that he contained so well. Jake pranced out, eager to escape the confines of his space. He immediately leaned against her, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, inhaling his comforting scent. It was here, in the stable, that Sarah felt more alive than ever. The bond they shared was palpable, built on countless adventures, whispered secrets, and an unbreakable trust. As she brushed his coat, Sarah let her worries slide away, finding solace in the rhythm of her movements. Each stroke was a meditation, a gentle reminder that here, in this space, nothing else mattered. There were no deadlines, no meetings, just her and Jake. She chuckled as he nudged her shoulder playfully, his insatiable curiosity always bringing a lightness that lifted her heart. But on this night, an overwhelming sense of foreboding crept in, much like the storm outside. While she adored these moments, dark thoughts began to weave into her mind, thoughts of her strained relationships and the loneliness that seeped in during quiet nights. Jake seemed to sense this shift, his ears twitching toward her, attuned to every emotional undercurrent. "Why do I let everything weigh me down, Jake?" she murmured, continuing to brush. "You're the only one who understands me." The horse nickered softly, his breath warm and calming against her cheek. For a fleeting moment, Sarah believed she could escape it all, leave behind the expectations and fears that clawed at her soul. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the barn, momentarily casting eerie shadows along the walls. It jolted her to attention. The storm had intensified, and she could hear the howling wind outside. Fear wrapped around her heart, but Jake remained at her side, an unwavering presence. "I guess I'm not the only one who hates storms," she joked, trying to mask her anxiety with humor. But the joke felt hollow, and silence filled the space around them, thick and suffocating. In an impulsive moment, Sarah grabbed Jake's reins and led him outside. The storm was ferocious. Gusts of wind whipped her hair around her face, and the rain lashed against her like a million tiny daggers. They stepped into the unfolding chaos together. "Let's show this storm we aren't afraid," she shouted defiantly, her voice lost against the raging winds. Jake, emboldened by her passion, took off, galloping across the wild landscape, each stride a rebellion against the forces trying to confine them. They thundered down the path, splashing through puddles, invigorated by the sheer thrill of the moment. The freedom of the open field fulfilled something deep within Sarah that had felt scarce lately. Here, amidst the chaos, she was alive, no longer a woman crushed under burdens, but a spirit in motion, wild and free. But as they rounded a bend, They paused unexpectedly. Sarah sensed movement nearby, something lurking just beyond the tree line. She squinted through the curtain of rain, and just as her heartbeat quickened, a flash of pale skin darted through the shadows. Panic gripped her. Who or what was watching them? "Jake, we need to go," she shouted, her voice warring against the thundering of the storm. The horse snorted, ears pricked, sensing her fear. They turned, racing back toward the barn. But Sarah felt eyes upon them, a sensation that would follow her even as they sought refuge. Inside the barn, the chaos of the storm was a distant memory. Here it was warm and safe. Overwhelmed, she leaned against Jake, who stood there, still and strong. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. He met her gaze, a calm presence as the world outside continued to rage. Lost in the quiet intimacy, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted that night. The storm had raged, testing her limits, yet within that chaos lay clarity. She glanced at Jake, his gentle gaze promising strength and understanding, and knew she didn't have to face the world alone. In their electric connection, she found refuge, a testament to everything they shared. A bond that went beyond words, one that could weather any storm. Secrets of the trail. The storm had passed, but remnants of its chaos lingered in the air. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting an otherworldly glow across the landscape. A serene peace enveloped the barn, and Sarah took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scents of hay and leather. Inside, she felt safe, but her heart still raced from the lingering uncertainty of their earlier encounter. Who would have been hiding in the shadows? As dusk settled in, Sarah knew she needed to clear her mind. The following day promised more challenges, and she wanted to start it fresh. She saddled Jake, moving with practiced ease, their routine almost like a dance. Each click of the saddle's latch resonated with anticipation, and she could feel Jake's energy radiating through the air. "Ready for an adventure, big guy?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as though the world outside might eavesdrop. Jake responded with a soft nicker, seasoned excitement sparking between them. Together, they stepped out of the barn and into the twilight. The trail loomed ahead, shrouded in mystery, the path twisting and turning through whispering trees. There was something alluring yet intimidating about it, almost as if the forest was alive and watching. As they commenced their ride, Sarah's grip on the reins tightened slightly, her heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. The woods felt dense around them, and shadows danced, playing tricks on her senses. Every rustle felt magnified, every snap of a twig made her pulse quicken. And still, she pressed on, guided by an unyielding desire for freedom and clarity. They trotted along the winding trail, the soft thud of Jake's hooves creating a rhythmic melody that lulled her mind. The vibrant colors of the sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, a stark contrast to her swirling thoughts. She made a conscious effort to connect with Jake, to push aside her worries. "Let's just enjoy the ride," she breathed, smiling at the way Jake flicked his ears as if he understood her every word. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the trees loomed larger, casting long shadows that flickered and swayed. Suddenly, Sarah felt a prickle at the back of her neck, a sensation of being scrutinized. She glanced back but saw nothing, only the soft rustle of leaves in the fading light. "Just my imagination," she reassured herself, shaking off the discomfort. Yet she couldn't completely dismiss the feeling. Focusing her thoughts on Jake's steady rhythm helped, and she felt their bond deepening with every stride. The tranquility didn't last long, though. As they reached a clearing, Sarah spotted something out of the corner of her eye. A figure lingering at the edge of the trees. Instinct kicked in, her heart racing again. "Jake, hold still," she murmured, trying to calm the horse as he sensed her unease. But the figure was gone before she could comprehend it, vanished as mysteriously as it appeared. "Was that real?" she asked aloud, confusion and fear mingling in her voice. Jake snorted softly, his muscles tense beneath her, as if he too sensed something unusual. Despite her apprehension, Sarah felt compelled to investigate, an insatiable curiosity tugging at her. "Let's just take a closer look," she decided, forcing herself to maintain control. They moved slowly toward the thicket where she had seen the figure, her heart beating wildly in her chest. The forest was quiet now, the only sound the rhythmic crunch of leaves underfoot. Each step felt heavy with weight. The air around her thickened, and she strained to hear any hint of movement. Just as doubt began to creep in, what if it was nothing, just her imagination, she caught another glimpse. A flash of pale fabric darting behind a tree. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing through the stillness. She felt a mix of vulnerability and bravery, stepping further into the shadows. "Is anyone there?" Silence reigned. Her heart raced as she half expected something to jump out at her, yet a part of her desperately craved an answer. "Maybe you're just spooking yourself," she chastised, shifting nervously in the saddle. But as she turned to leave, the unmistakable sound of a branch snapping behind her made her freeze. She gripped the reins tighter, ready to bolt if needed. "Jake, easy," she soothed, feeling his muscles tense in response to her anxiety. Suddenly, from the underbrush, a young girl appeared, wide-eyed and breathless. Her pale face was smudged with dirt, and her tangled hair fell over her brow. "I didn't mean to scare you," the girl exclaimed, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "What are you doing out here?" Sarah asked, astonished and yet relieved to find a human presence after the tension. "You scared me half to death." "My name is Lily," the girl said, her eyes darting between Sarah and Jake. "I got lost while picking wildflowers. My friends were supposed to help me, but I wandered off." Sarah felt her heart soften, the fear dissipating. "Are you all right? It's not safe to be out here alone, especially with the storm earlier." Lily nodded, her expression earnest. "I know the way back, I promise. I just wanted to find the prettiest flowers." Her innocence was palpable, and Sarah felt an inexplicable urge to protect her. "Okay, let's get you home," Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. She gestured toward the path. "Hop on with me. I have a horse, and we can ride back together." The girl's face lit up, and she eagerly took a few steps forward, her little hands reaching for the horse. "Really, I love horses." "Then let's go." Sarah smiled, feeling a wave of excitement wash over her as Lily climbed into the saddle behind her. "Hold on tight!" As they rode through the trees, the canopy overhead began to shift, sunlight filtering through the leaves, painting the ground in dappled light. Sarah glanced back at the girl, whose eyes sparkled with wonder. "Have you ridden before?" she asked, excitement bubbling within her. "Just a little. My dad has a pony," Lily replied, her voice barely containing her joy. "This is amazing." It felt right. They were galloping along the path, the wind whipping through their hair. Sarah couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of adventure, the earlier tension fading away with each step Jake took. "What kind of flowers were you looking for?" "The ones that look like stars," Lily exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "The ones my mom likes. We always pick them in the summer." As they rounded a bend, the edge of the woods appeared ahead, and Lily pointed eagerly. "There, that's where I was!" "Just over there by the creek." But Sarah's instincts flared once more as she slowed Jake's pace. "Wait," she said, her gaze scanning the surroundings. This area felt too quiet, too still. The shadows seemed to linger longer, and her earlier fears returned. "Stay close," she instructed Lily, who instinctively leaned against her back. Just as they reached the creek, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. Jake stopped instinctively, his ears pricked forward, alert. The growl grew louder, and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot suggested they weren't alone. Panic surged through her. "What was that?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Sarah replied, trying to sound calm despite her racing heart. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she searched the shadows, desperate to remain vigilant. Suddenly, a figure emerged, this time larger than before. A coppery-colored wolf materialized from the brush, eyes gleaming with a wild intelligence, standing just beyond the thicket. Jake instinctively repositioned himself, sensing the tension, and Sarah quickly assessed their options. She felt the child's breath hitch behind her. "Stay still, Lily," she whispered urgently, urging Jake to back a step, hoping to distance themselves from the creature. The wolf watched them, its gaze unwavering. In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah realized she had to act quickly. "Easy, boy," she murmured to Jake, willing him to remain calm. "We need to go." But as she turned to retreat, the wolf lunged forward. The fear consumed her, its presence both terrifying and majestic. "Hold on tight!" she shouted, squeezing Jake's sides. They bolted forward, racing past the creek and back toward the cover of the trees, adrenaline propelling them onward. Even as they increased speed, Sarah could hear the growl of the wolf chasing after them, echoing in the thickening dusk. Every heartbeat radiated within her as she fought to maintain control, knowing they were not just running from something, they were also racing towards safety, a haven she and Jake knew all too well. The trees flew past in a blur, and as they neared the barn, she felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. Jake surged forward, instinctively seeking the familiar embrace of the stable. They burst through the barn doors, racing past the shelter of the walls just as the wolf's growl faded into the distance. Heart-pounding, Sarah dismounted, quickly helping Lily down. "Are you okay?" she asked breathlessly, brushing dirt and grass off the girl's clothes. I think so," Lily replied, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and adrenaline-fueled excitement. "That was so cool, but also scary." Sarah couldn't help but chuckle nervously, her own heart still racing from the encounter. "I didn't expect that either. You're braver than I am." She called Jake over, taking a moment to calm him. As she saw the deep connection in his eyes, she realized how effortlessly they had leaned on each other through the unexpected ordeal. "Can we ride again tomorrow?" Lily asked, her voice full of hopeful enthusiasm, the earlier fear forgotten. With a soft smile, Sarah nodded. "Absolutely. But let's make sure to keep a lookout for wolves next time." The two girls burst into laughter, shattering the tension that had been so palpable mere moments earlier. The day had started with storms, fear, and uncertainty, but it had transformed into a tapestry of connection and adventure. They may have faced the shadows, but it was the light of friendship, and her bond with Jake that reminded Sarah that in the ebb and flow of life, they could weather anything together. The encounter. The barn felt like a fortress after the chaotic ride back, its familiar scents and shadows wrapping around Sarah like a warm embrace. But even in the safety of its walls, the events of the day rattled through her mind like an echoing drum. Lily's presence had changed the atmosphere, infusing it with a sense of adventure, yet the lingering unease from the wolf encounter hung heavy in the air. "All right, let's take care of Jake," Sarah said, shaking off the remnants of their earlier fears. She had always turned to her horse for comfort in moments of uncertainty, and tonight would be no different. As she filled Jake's water trough, she stole glances at Lily, who sat on a hay bale, twirling a strand of her hair, lost in thought. "Do you ride here often?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Every chance I get," Sarah replied, finishing her task and patting Jake's neck affectionately. "He's my best friend. I come here to escape life's craziness. What about you? Do you ride with your dad often?" Lily shrugged. "Sometimes. I wish I could come here every day. It's magical." There was a sparkle in the girl's eyes, a pure mirth that reminded Sarah of her own childhood, before worries and responsibilities clouded her every thought. Just then, the barn doors creaked, and Sarah's heart raced unexpectedly as she turned to see Ethan, the photographer from the other day, stepping into the warm glow of the barn. "Hey," he called out casually, offering a friendly smile. "I saw you two riding earlier. Looked like an adventure." "Just a little bit of excitement," Sarah replied, attempting to mask her apprehension. She guided Lily to hide slightly behind her, a protective instinct kicking in despite the earlier bond formed between them. Ethan stepped forward, his curiosity piqued. "Was there any trouble? I heard some odd sounds out here." "Our ride turned into a bit of an adventure," Sarah said cautiously. "Lily got lost while picking flowers, and then we had a close encounter with a wolf." Ethan's expression shifted, his brow furrowing slightly. "A wolf? That's serious. Were you both okay?" "Yeah," Sarah said quickly, glancing at Lily, who nodded enthusiastically, eager to recount her story. But Sarah felt an urge to downplay it. The last thing they needed was to invoke fear. "We managed just fine. Jake here was a fantastic horse." "Good to hear," Ethan replied, his eyes lingering on Jake. "Is there a chance I might take a few more pictures of you two? It must have been a memorable moment." The proposition lingered in the air, and while Sarah hesitated, Lily bounced in excitement. "Can we please?" "Sure," Sarah agreed, wanting to make the day special for Lily and grateful for the chance to capture their bond. "Just be mindful of Jake. He's a little skittish sometimes." As Ethan began to set up his camera, Sarah felt a flicker of connection rekindle between them. He seemed genuinely interested, and in that brief moment, the earlier wolves and shadows faded into the background. There was something refreshing about his presence that soothed her frayed nerves. "Okay, let's do some riding poses," he called out, repositioning himself to capture the dynamic spirit of their partnership. "Sarah, can you show Jake off a bit? And Lily, help with the reins." They fell into a rhythm, laughter echoing through the barn. Sarah felt joy expanding within her chest, a feeling she had nearly forgotten. With each click of the camera shutter, they captured the essence of youth, freedom, and adventure. But beneath the surface, an unsettling sense nagged at her. With heightened awareness, she kept peeking out the barn's doorway, half expecting the wolf or some shadowy figure to reappear. She dismissed it as paranoia. Everything had been fine since returning from the trail, after all. As they wrapped up the photo session, Ethan stepped closer, reviewing the images on his camera. "You two look incredible. Seriously, there's a real magic there," he said, his eyes sparkling with admiration. "I'd love to share these. Maybe even post one or two." Before Sarah could respond, a distant growl echoed through the barn, sharper now and more menacing. All three of them froze. Jake's ears perked up and he snorted nervously, sensing the tension. Sarah's heart fled to her throat. The earlier encounter replayed in her mind, vivid and chilling. "What was that?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Ethan replied, his expression becoming serious. "It could be that wolf. Or something worse," Sarah added, feeling the weight of her instinctual fear pressing in. She stepped toward the barn door, peeking out into the twilight. The world outside was eerily quiet, the wind carrying a whisper of unease. "Jake, easy now," she murmured, keeping her distance from the doorframe. Her heart raced as the growl resonated once more, reverberating ominously. Sarah turned back to the others, her mind racing. "Do you think it's possible it followed us here?" she asked keenly. Ethan's eyes narrowed, deep in thought. "It's possible. They can be territorial, especially if their area is disturbed." He glanced at Lily, then back at Sarah. "We should probably stay inside until we're sure it's safe." As they huddled together, Sarah felt an unexplainable chill engulf the barn. "I will check the area," Ethan said, his voice steady, but the flicker of nervousness evident in his tight posture. "Stay here. I'll be quick. No, wait!" Sarah exclaimed, instinctively reaching out to him. "You shouldn't go out alone. We can all check together." "Let's not put Lily in danger," he countered, glancing at the young girl, who hid further behind Sarah, her eyes wide in fear. "I'll be just a minute." "Ethan, please," Sarah insisted, a wave of panic washing over her. The idea of being left alone while he ventured out into the unknown felt reckless. "We need to stick together." Howls resonated in the distance, making her breath catch in her throat. What had started as a playful evening was rapidly spiraling into something dark and foreboding. In the heavy silence between them, they could almost hear each other's thoughts, memories of the earlier chase fresh in their minds. Ethan hesitated, glancing between Sarah and Lily. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we'll go as a group. But let's keep quiet. We need to make sure not to attract any attention." "Good plan," Sarah agreed, her heart still pounding as she clutched Jake's reins tightly. "I'll ride, so we can move quicker." They moved cautiously toward the barn doors, 3 sets of eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. The sun dipped lower, the world cloaked in shadows, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Sarah felt every pore on her body tingling, a connection with Jake that told her he was uneasy as well. As they stepped out into the dim light, Sarah took the lead with Jake, urging him forward gently. Ethan followed closely behind, and Lily brought up the rear, her small hand gripping Sarah's coat tightly. They navigated the barnyard, listening carefully for any sounds, every shift of the grass sending a jolt of adrenaline through them. Let's head toward the trees where we saw it last, Ethan suggested quietly, pointing to the edge of the woods. If it's close, we might be able to see it before it sees us. Sarah nodded, but the dread in her gut twisted tighter. As they reached the tree line, she could feel the air grow heavier once more, thick with anticipation. They entered the woods slowly, moving as quietly as possible, listening for any sound above the rustling leaves. Then, from somewhere deeper within the forest, they heard it again, a long, haunting howl echoing through the trees, sending a shiver down Sarah's spine. It wasn't just one wolf. The haunting sound mingled and multiplied until it painted a picture of an entire pack. See? There's more than one, Ethan whispered, urgency lacing his tone. We should turn back. But just then, a dark shape darted between the trees, moving fast, and Sarah's breath hitched. Did you see that? She gasped, her heart hammering in her chest. I did, Ethan replied, eyes wide with concern. We need to go back now. Before they could react, the sound of pounding footsteps approached from the thicket, followed by the piercing howl of wolves flowing through the air. Panic surged as Sarah realized they wouldn't have time to retreat safely. Run, she yelled, spinning to grab Lily's hand, urgency propelling them back toward the barn, the overwhelming instinct to survive awakening all her senses. Jake bolted forward, his stride steady as they raced, adrenaline driving every ounce of power in his muscles. Sarah could hear the howls grow louder, echoing behind them like a cruel pursuit, a looming shadow closing in. Don't look back, she instructed, urging Jake onward, feeling the adrenaline and terror coiling tighter within her. The barn loomed ahead, a steadfast refuge marked against the darkness closing in around them. As they reached the barn doors, Sarah flung them open, ushering Ethan and Lily inside. They tumbled through, gasping for breath, and slammed the doors shut just as the first echoes of growling reached their ears, followed by a series of scratches against the wood. What do we do? Lily cried out, her voice trembling as she clutched Sarah's arm. Stay quiet, Sarah whispered sternly, her own heart racing. We need to find a way to secure the doors. Ethan rushed to help, grabbing nearby tools and hastily working to barricade the entrance. Sarah felt the weight of fear pressing down on them, the oppressive silence holding its breath as they awaited the unknown. I'm scared, Lily admitted softly, her eyes shimmering in the dark. I know, Sarah said gently, her hands shaking, but she pushed through the fear, leading the way. But we're safe in here, as long as we stick together. As the howls grew fainter outside, thick shadows danced in the corners of the barn. The day had morphed into a nightmare, and in that moment, Sarah understood something gut-wrenching. The solace she once sought in the barn had become a battleground for survival. But even among the anxiety, she felt a fierce determination grow, a flame ignited by the will to protect Lily and find their way out of the darkness. Together, they would weather this storm, whatever it took. As she clutched Jake's reins, she vowed that her bond with the horse would guide them through, illuminating the path back to safety. Unraveling tension. The atmosphere inside the barn was thick with tension. Sarah's eyes darted between Ethan and Lily, both of whom were trying to catch their breath after the frantic dash back to safety. Concrete walls surrounded them, yet the growing sense of imprisonment felt stifling. Outside, an eerie stillness had settled, but the echo of howls lingered in the back of her mind, firming her resolve to keep everyone safe. We need to make sure the doors are secure, Ethan said, panting slightly. He and Sarah worked together to shift hay bales and tools in front of the entrance. The barn, once their sanctuary, now felt like a fortress under siege. Lily huddled close to Sarah, her small hands trembling. Will they find us? She whispered, fear evident in her eyes. No, Sarah replied firmly, though she felt a pang of uncertainty. We're hidden away in here. They won't get inside. But even as she reassured Lily, the distant howls seemed to taunt them, their chilling echoes whispering uncertainty. Ethan stepped back from the makeshift barricade, wiping sweat from his brow. We should check the windows next, he said, glancing toward the small openings that lined the barn walls. We need to see if we can spot where they are. Are you sure that's wise? Sarah questioned, her heart racing. What if they're right outside? I get that it's risky, he replied. "But we need to know if the coast is clear. If they're still hanging around, we'll have more time to plan." With a tense nod, Sarah approached the nearest window, peering through the grime-caked glass. The evening sun was now a sliver on the horizon, casting long shadows across the barnyard. The field outside was disconcertingly quiet, a haunting calm layered over the disarray. Yet something felt amiss. The tension in the air prickled against her skin. "Do you see anything?" Ethan asked, leaning closer. Sarah squinted, scanning the edges of the woods. Then it hit her, a flicker of movement danced at the tree's edge. "Wait. Over there," she whispered urgently, pointing toward the shadowed thicket where she thought she had seen something before. "Do you see that?" Ethan leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the area. "Yeah, but it's too dark to tell." "We can't risk it," Sarah said, heart pounding. "Let's check the back to see if there's a different way out. If we need to make an escape, I don't want to be trapped in here." Lily's eyes widened as she clutched Sarah's arm tighter. "I don't want to leave the barn," she protested. Her voice quivered with fear. "I know," Sarah replied softly, bending down to meet Lily's gaze. "But we'll be with you. We have to gather information, okay? That way, we can make a better plan. We'll be safer that way." Lily nodded hesitantly, her trust evident, and Sarah felt a swell of responsibility crash over her. They needed to stick together, to be brave. They moved cautiously to the back of the barn, navigating around stray tools and hay bales that created makeshift pathways. Ethan stayed close behind them, a protective presence, his body tense and alert. The back door appeared, slightly ajar, a glimmer of hope. "This could lead us outside," Sarah whispered, pushing it open just enough to peer through. The soft light illuminated the back of the barnyard, the remaining daylight casting an unearthly glow across their path. But just outside, the unsettling quiet clung heavily in the air. "Let's stay alert," Ethan cautioned, glancing around. "If anything is lurking out there, we need to be ready." As they stepped through the doorway, Sarah felt an electric tension quivering beneath her skin. It was as if the air itself was holding its breath. The world outside felt different now, heightened and charged, enveloped in uncertainty. "Look," Ethan said, pointing toward the tree line. The underbrush had shifted, the telltale signs of movement revealing that they weren't as alone as they thought. Thereby the trees. Before Sarah could fully comprehend the sight, a pair of eyes gleamed through the darkness, reflecting the dying light in an eerie glow. Her heart stopped as recognition set in: a wolf, powerful and sleek, prowling just beyond the edge of the light. Suddenly the stillness shattered. The wolf let out an ear-piercing howl, summoning others from the shadows. The sound resonated through the air like a war cry, echoing in Sarah's bones. "We need to get back inside," she shouted, panic flooding her senses. But as they turned to retreat, more figures slipped from the cover of darkness. 4 wolves in total, their eyes locking onto them with predatory hunger. "Run!" Ethan yelled, urgency fueling his tone, and instinct guided them back toward the barn as they sprinted for their lives. Each pounding hoofstep felt impossibly loud against the soft earth, and Sarah could hear the snarls of the wolves, growing closer with each frantic heartbeat. They scrambled back inside, slamming the door shut behind them. "We have to barricade it!" Sarah shouted, breathing heavily as they piled hay bales and equipment against the entrance. "The windows," Ethan added. "We have to cover them too fast." Lily's small frame trembled as she silently helped, adrenaline coursing through them all. Sarah looked around, searching for anything they could use to fortify their defenses. "This way!" She motioned as she hurried to the windows, throwing down tools and anything that could serve as an additional barrier. Time felt suspended. The air was thick with fear and urgency. Outside, the wolves circled the barn, their howls reverberating like a dark warning through the night. The shadows seemed to whisper, taunting their vulnerability. "Do you think they'll try to get in?" Lily quivered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Sarah replied firmly, though her own fear blended with determination. "But we won't let them. We're safe in here." With every beat of her heart, a small confidence built within her. Jake stood quietly in the corner of the barn, ephemeral wisdom radiating from his presence like a beacon of reassurance. "Stay close, Jake," she murmured, reaching out to stroke his neck, feeling the warmth of his strength. They had an unshakable bondone that would guide them through this night. Just then, Ethan exclaimed, "I have an idea!" He headed toward the tool shelf, rummaging through a collection of items before pulling out a flare gun. "This might help distract them." "A flare?" Sarah questioned, eyebrows raised, uncertain but intrigued. "Do you think it'll work?" "It'll create a loud noise and a bright light. It might disperse them or at least buy us some time to escape." He gestured toward the door. "If we can lure them away, we might stand a chance of getting to safety." With a shared nod of determination, they all turned their attention back to the door as they prepared themselves for what lay ahead. As the howls intensified outside, Sarah felt a deep resolve harden within her. "When I fire the flare," Ethan said, "we need to be quick. We'll create a diversion, run to the truck, and drive away before they have a chance to regroup." "Okay," Sarah affirmed, adrenaline buzzing through her veins. "Let's do it." With a deep breath, Ethan positioned himself at the door. "On 3, he counted softly. 1, 2, 3! He pressed the trigger, and the flare erupted into life. A brilliant plume of color erupted from the barrel, soaring into the night sky. The deafening blast split the air as the flare shot high above the barn, lighting up the dark expanse like a shooting star. The wolves recoiled instinctively, howls erupting, the piercing light and sound sending them momentarily into disarray. "Now?" Sarah shouted, urging everyone forward. With fear propelling them, they rushed towards the back exit. The flare flickered behind them, illuminating the path just long enough for them to see the way forward. They tore out into the barnyard toward the truck parked nearby, a glimmer of hope shining in the darkness. "Jump in, quick," Sarah urged, throwing open the passenger door as her heart pounded furiously. Ethan scrambled into the driver's seat with Lily close behind, and Sarah slung herself into the back. The roar of the engine ignited hope as Ethan turned the key, but time felt excruciatingly slow. The flare's light dimmed the closer they got to the truck, and the wolves were regaining their bearings. "Go! Go!" Sarah shouted, her pulse racing until the engine finally roared to life. The vehicle jolted forward, and just as they pulled away, shadows erupted from the tree line, a pack of wolves soaring toward them, their faces twisted in primal rage, as the truck barreled down the rough dirt road. The trees blurred past, swallowing them in the night, heartbeats thin unison, adrenaline washing over them as they made their way away from the looming terror behind them. "We're okay," Lily exclaimed, her voice barely cutting through the chaos. Sarah turned to share a triumphant smile with Ethan, a glimmer of shared victory shining in the dark. They had made it, at least for now. But the shadows of the forest lingered in the back of her mind, knowing they might not be out of danger yet. "Keep driving," she urged, glancing back at the dimming lights of the barn fading into the distance. They were safe for the moment, but this was only the beginning. As they drove on under the unyielding night sky, the bonds they had forged would be tested, and together they would face whatever uncertainty awaited them. They'd learned that in the darkness, shadows hovered everywhere, but the light of hope could still shine, illuminating their path even in the depths of fear.